One of the things that I dug about with Malignant was the fact that I thought for sure James was going to go there because he is known for his supernatural horror.
Yeah.
So when you had her going, Gabriel, and she called him the devil and all of that, I'm like, oh, okay, so it's going to be a supernatural thing because it's James Wan. And then it wasn't. And it just elevated everything. And I was like, mad props, James. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, you did not do another Conjuring supernatural, spooky ghost things. You went straight up body horror and committed to that. And it was a beautiful thing. For me, I mean, it was worth it. Those last 20 minutes, I was smiling ear to ear. And it was like, wow, okay. Like, yeah, now we're having fun. Now this explains exactly why the rest of the film was the way it was, because it was just like those late 80s, early 90s direct-to-video stuff that, you got like 2/3 of the film where you're just like, oh, this is okay. And then they just do something off the wall and you're just like, yes.
Yeah, it kind of there was an old horror picture that no one talks about. It's called The Beast Within, starred Ronnie Cox, and that one, it's the last 20 minutes or so when the actual beast arrives, and this is that. I remember when I went to go see it in the theaters, and when that scene takes place, this is wow.
Yeah, I like when films do that. So for me, yeah, that saved really Malignant for me, and I enjoyed it by the end of it. By the end of it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, you pulled it out, James. Thank you, and all the practical gore and such as well was just a beautiful thing to see a budget behind it. It was kind of like I equate James Wan's Malignant to Del Toro's Pacific Rim, in that they do these other films that they just make major bank and everybody knows, and then they make a pet project that's just they want to make it. Pacific Rim was Del Toro making a kaiju film. He didn't care if it made money. He wanted to make a kaiju film. People gave him money, and so he made.
They say, "Oh, good, I can make my kaiju film." You could tell that he was definitely influenced not by Godzilla, but definitely because I got huge Ultraman vibes from Pacific Rim.
Oh yeah, and that's why it did better overseas than it did domestically. For that simple fact was it did because of that. So I like, Tim Burton did that too. He always admitted to doing that too, where he did the big studio films to get money. And then the next film or two would be one that he had wanted to do because he got money for it. So, not a bad model. So, but tonight, I appreciate you, sir, and I appreciate everyone. Welcome to the Spoiler Room. We have a viewer tonight, and I thank you, Lamont, for joining me tonight because we're continuing our no expiration date month here in the Spoiler Room. Last week, we talked some Immortals with Zardoz.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. That movie, man. You're man. Wow, Sean Connery, this is what happens when you pull in favors, man. That's exactly what happens. And
the minute I saw that on Facebook when you were talking about the movie, I just got the red thing that he wears throughout the whole film. I'm like, oh man, I don't need that visual.
It's all everyone remembers. I'm like, there's a cosplay you don't need to do. Okay. Not without getting thrown out of the con. So we're continuing tonight with our discussion of Immortal films this month. And tonight I decided to look at a new one. We've been looking at some older films, and this one came out in the last year, got a lot of buzz when it came out, and it's called The Old Guard. And Lamont, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to, you don't have to, but would you mind giving the synopsis of The Old Guard?
Well, the Old Guard is a covert team of immortal mercenaries that's suddenly exposed and now must fight to keep their identity secret just as an unexpected new member is discovered. Ooh.
Yeah, I didn't watch I didn't watch this till yesterday.
Ooh.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of times, especially in the last 5 years, I'm going to say, films that got huge buzz or just were talked about constantly ended up most of the time not quite living up for me to what people were hyping it up as. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll hold off on watching one of those hype films or hype shows until it dies down. And then I'll go into it, even if it's been spoiled to me, because I just, I want to go in without that hype machine on me, because when I have done that in the past, a lot of times it just didn't live up to it. But did you watch it when it first came out?
Yeah, I was kind of intrigued because it was a different type of story. I saw the trailer. Obviously, a Charlize Theron, that was another good thing because she does pretty good when she stars in action role pictures, but mainly because she's such a good actress. Right. So I said, well, this seems to be an interesting premise, and it was a trailer that got me, and it was actually pretty good. I love the storyline. I love the mythology, how the Immortals are, and how long they've been doing this before. I like how they bring the new person in. I like how they do that. And I also like the fact is that despite their long lives, they eventually will run out of it. And eventually, once they start getting injured, then they know that their time is short.
Yeah, I liked that angle quite a bit, that they didn't know when their time would be. They just know that suddenly one day they're immortal, and then one day they're not. Unfortunately, the film has a lot of foreshadowing with that, with some very direct dialogue, which, in a film like this, you're not looking for quite, deep dialogue, but still, we'll get into that in a little bit. But how'd you, when you first saw it, what'd you think about it? Come on.
I was impressed. I was impressed with the action scenes. I was impressed with how there was one great decent fight scene with Charlize Theron. It was like, wow, that's really good how they edited the fight scene, how they choreographed it. She's definitely a total badass when she's fighting, which is pretty good. For a person who's been as long as she's been alive, you would expect her to be an excellent fighter. So you believe when she's doing the stunts, you believe that she's actually fighting that well because she's been around for a long time. So
yeah, she is the oldest of the old guard in this film, and I liked her performance quite a bit in this because she is old, the most experienced. But what's funny is she felt, and this is going to sound bad, but it's just the way her character is. She felt old. Yeah. She felt tired, no matter what she was doing, and the way you just could see it. Like she was really tired.
Yeah. You just imagine living that amount of experience and then unfortunately having to lose, I guess her best love.
Yeah.
Best love. And, so you can see that weariness on her, the fact that she's been around for such a long time and she's lost her true love in a very violent way. So, you can see the weariness on her face. And I thought that was great, that the fact that despite the fact they've been around for a long time, they've also had tragedy throughout this time. And the fact that makes a person weary.
Yeah, she's just worried because she felt the kind of underlying theme with her character was that she felt like they weren't doing any good. She's like, what's the point? After she's done this for seriously thousands of years, she's questioning it all of why are we around? We're not improving things. In fact, the world's getting worse. We come to find later that's not the actual case with her character, but she doesn't realize it from her perspective.
No.
Which was an interesting, I like that. There's a lot of cool aspects they do with this that elevate it just a little bit above, a normal straight, Immortals with action.
Yeah, because when she, you could see the doubt on her, and the fact is that we're really not changing anything, and then until when I cannot pronounce this guy's name, Chidua Athura, whatever his name is.
Yeah, I could never pronounce his name correctly, unfortunately. Chiwetel Ejiofor. four.
Each of four. Well, I
Yeah.
think they're saying pronounced this way. And when he actually shows them all the good that they've done, then her perspective changes. And I thought that they waited until at the end, towards the end of the movie, that he shows them, okay, because what you did, this happened, and what you did, this happened, and actually can see that, wow, we really are making a difference.
Yeah, and he plays Copley, who we're introduced at the beginning as an ally. He's part of the CIA, and he's been familiar with this group of 4 immortals. He's hired them before. And then we learn, of course, dun dun dun. Yes, folks, this is the spoiler room. He betrays them for in kind of a Thanos way, for lack of a better. He thinks he's doing good by getting in league with a very crazy billionaire who runs a big pharma company. What'd you think of the Copley character? Because he was really, I thought, a little more complex than I thought initially he was going to be.
Yeah, he turned out to be a pretty good character. He wasn't the typical cliche character, unlike the so-called villain in the film, who was definitely cliche.
Harry Melling playing Merrick, who is the big pharma young billionaire type of wackadoo who is looking to extend life but also make money off of it. And when he learns of the Immortals, that's why he hires Copley, so that they could try to capture them and get, samples and such, and basically replicate their immortality. So he could synthesize it, sell it to the masses and make a little green meal. That's kind of his whole motivation. Did you think there was any other motivation besides making money? Was he afraid of getting old? Maybe.
I didn't get that from him from the movie. I just thought he was just being the typical. It was just pure greed.
Yeah,
I'll make money. No, he wasn't, because you would think that in a movie like this that the bad guy would be an old guy, like in Prometheus. We find out the guy, he's dying and he still wants to live, and that kind of would made a little bit better sense. But I guess decided not to go with that type of cliche, so they went with the other cliche where the guy's just playing greedy with money.
Yeah, there are cliches in here too. I mean, like I said, I mentioned the foreshadowing. You literally get a story of Charlize Theron's character Andy mentioning how their immortality can just end at any moment, and we do a flashback to when she lost the love of her life, and then suddenly, after this wonderful sequence in this old abandoned church, this beautiful fight sequence, you come to find out, dun dun dun, she's no longer immortal.
She's immortal. What's going on, Andy? Oh, damn, I can't heal anymore. Oh, damn.
It would have been nice to have a little bit of time between the presentation of, our immortality could run out at any time, and my immortality has suddenly run out. Although they do kind of explain it away, because we get the new immortal of the group, played by Kiki Lane, Nile, who I loved. I loved her character.
Oh, she was great in this. She was great.
I liked the way she was. It was performed, and especially the way she was written, because sometimes in films like this, you get the person who's the new recruit, and they say no, and then they go home, and then some tragedy happens at home, and then they decide to, okay, fine, I'll pair up with you, or they immediately just jump in and go for it. But she's kind of in the middle.
Yeah. She's kind of okay, all right, yeah, but then I don't know. She really doesn't go along with the things that they want to do,
right?
Until eventually decides, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I like that aspect of the character, and of course, she did a good job in portraying the character too.
Yeah, well, she plays a soldier. We're introduced to her and her squad, who is mostly made up of females. Yes, cue the bros going, oh, this is woke in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I don't care. I thought it was cool that she had her, group of soldiers, and they find this guy who's a suspected terrorist, and they get him, and they end up shooting him. But he ends up cutting her throat, and that's when it's revealed, she suddenly gets her immortality. And I thought it was just interesting how they explored how her whole base treated her when she came back from her injury. What'd you think about how they handled with that character, with that aspect?
It's kind of interesting. I kind of didn't like it, but sometimes when I try to take the writer's perspective of the reason why they went there and trying to understand, you had this soldier, she's dead, she gave her life, all of a sudden she's not dead anymore. Maybe I guess you don't know how you would react to something like that. So I kind of get the reason why they decided to have everyone freak out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I know what they were going for as well, was the fact of they're in a war zone. They've lost many people in war. They thought they lost her as a casualty in battle, doing, in service, but she comes back. It almost like they feel like that's unfair. I think that's what they were trying to play at, maybe, was that it was unfair that she came back. What I was surprised at, though, was usually, and this isn't a bad surprise, it was just I was surprised they didn't have anybody like some soldiers going, "Oh, you resurrected," or whatever, because some believers in their base or whatever suddenly trying to flock to her or talk to her or whatever because she came back, and they're thinking maybe there's some divine intervention going on, which is kind of implied in this film, that there might be divine intervention. Or do you think it's just more nature?
I think it's more nature than anything like that, because I was suspecting that too. That's why I was surprised when I didn't get that, because I was expecting, well, maybe some people will be happy, but no, they're all freaked out. They're all freaked out.
Yeah, they are all freaked out. I mean, and she's freaked out,
Yeah, no, yeah,
because she fully thought, okay. And what I thought was interesting was that guy was her, I guess, her first kill too. Though she turned around fairly quick and didn't have problems killing.
Oh no, she didn't have no problems killing nobody.
No, there was a span of time where she's like, "Oh, I don't know, that was my first kill and all." And all of a sudden, when faced with a bit more danger, she's just in there popping guys in the head. Right. A lot of headshots in this movie. Now, what'd you think of her crew, of Andy's crew? We had Booker, we had Joe, and we had Nikki. What'd you think of the dynamic between this group?
They had some interesting dynamics in this crew. I like the fact that, well, of course, again, we're going to get more of the woke people, that we had a gay couple. We had a gay couple in the film, and I like the fact that they were always been together. I like the other character who was kind of like, I think he was the second person that Andy chose, or the third person Andy chose.
He was the second one that Andy found.
Found. It's unfortunately, it's a shame that he decided to turn their backs on them, when he decided to sell them out. But he finally came around, but they decided to go on ahead, and he had to go on. They couldn't trust him anymore, so he had to go separate ways. But yeah, they had very interesting dynamic group that she has in there. They all trust each other. They all they all go their separate ways, and then when it's time to do another mission, then they all come back again.
Yeah, they understand each other, which I liked. You could tell there again, it's the way the performance was, and maybe it's some of the way it's written too, though. It felt like they had history. You get some films like this to where it feels very contrived. They've been together for a long time, but doesn't quite feel like that. But here it felt like they had history, both good and bad, with one another. And then with the Andy character, we also come to find out that she has there's been Immortals in the past. One in particular who was with her when she was with the love of her life when he died, was Quinn. And what'd you think about that story of how Quinn got locked in and dumped in the ocean, and basically she's immortal and she's still in the ocean?
Yeah, I kind of find it interesting how they did that. The fact that she's been stuck in the ocean all this time. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. I guess once they've realized that, okay, we can't kill her, so we're going to trap her and keep her down there until she, till her immortality runs out, and then she'll just drown eventually. she's going to drown eventually. So I thought that was a pretty interesting concept that people actually realize that you had these folks that had this ability. So how we're going to kill them? So we actually come up with a concept way of just, let's just put them in a box, seal it up, and just dump her in the ocean.
Yeah, and the Nile character is the one who discovers it because she dreams of this person, of Quinn, at the bottom of the ocean, which surprises Andy. She's like, "How the hell do you know Quinn?" It's like, and again, foreshadowing though. In all honesty, when it said she's been gone 500 years and I lost track of her, I'm like, okay, when's Quinn going to show up?
No, and that's why I said, "Oh, I got a feeling we're going to see her." And bang, here she goes at the end of the movie.
the end, just before the credits stinger, we get Quinn showing up, who apparently has rescued herself, which you kind of, you kind of saw it coming. I didn't mind it, but at the same time, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so because they want to set it up for a sequel, which I believe got approved. That they're looking at possibly.
From what I read, it's still in development, but they definitely are trying to bring out a sequel. In.
Which I'll be interested to see how they do it, because with the Andy character, the big thing is that she loses her mortality just as the new person shows up with her immortality, and you get that scene where Andy thinks that at the end where she thinks she lost her immortality because of Nile. Which makes you wonder, do you think it's a balance thing?
It could be a balance thing, kind of like the gods in Hancock,
right?
With Will Smith's character. Wasn't she in this one? She was in that one too, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like where they once they're immortal gods, but once they're together because they're fated together, then they'll lose their immortality and they become human. So it could be some type of a balance thing, because you don't want to have a whole bunch of immortality people running around. So it has to kind of balance itself out that once one person starts to lose their immortality, then another one that's fated will start to gain theirs. So at least the way it keeps their numbers low.
Right, and that's kind of the impression I got, and I think that'd be a great exploration. That's one thing. Now, Lamont, modern films. Here comes the old man on my lawn moment, but still, a lot of modern films like to give you an explanation for everything. We don't get that in here. Is that a good or bad thing with the old guard?
That's kind of a good thing. It depends upon the story, because if you have a good enough story, you don't have to you can only add so much of mythology into the story that you're writing. You don't want to overdo it and kill your audience with a whole bunch of exposition. You want to have people to at least use their imagination, so that way you don't over explain everything. Because I'm pretty sure if they do make a second movie, we might get some more mythology background on the Immortals. But I thought the story was good enough, so that way, we got some good mythology here. We got some good backstory and where they come from, but we don't need to overdo it. So I'm glad they didn't over dump us, because that's one of the problems when you have movies set in modern days and you try to go back to the past. Some writers have a tendency to overcompensate, because they say, well, we got to explain this, we got to explain that. No. We don't need a whole bunch of exposition dumps.
Right. Now, I mean, we did get some exposition stuff just to bring in another film, Candyman, but they presented it in a very interesting way with the paper dolls and the shadow. So I thought that was an interesting way to handle it, to where, I don't mind exposition if you do it in an interesting way.
Yes.
I was happy they didn't hear, which almost started to give me a little bit of Highlander vibe with this, as far as how they were immortal before Highlander 2, folks, and the sequels. Just Highlander itself. When you don't have the explanation for why they're immortal, they just are. Not that fictional piece of work.
Can we just forget Highlander 2, just like we can forget about The Exorcist?
Just like Exorcist 2. Let's just cut that from our brain.
I mean, if you want to talk about ruining a whole mythology, that movie they're aliens? Who the hell came up with that idea?
And then they came up with the director's cut, and that didn't make it any better.
I'm glad I didn't see it because I just saw the theatrical. I forgot there was a director's cut.
It did.
But I mean, I understand you wanted to bring Sean Connery back because you wanted to sell tickets, but come on, guys.
Yeah. But we're talking more Highlander next week. But here with the Old Guard, it was giving me. I could almost see this fitting within the world that Highlander Immortals exist, almost like a different type of immortal. The way they play it out, especially with the action scenes, which I loved how the action sequences were directed in this. I mean, Monty, how'd you feel with the way they actually shot and handled these action sequences?
Oh, those, like I said, that was decent. I love how they handled the action scenes. That's really what drove the movie home, was the action scenes. It was believable. They're all capable fighters. Even the people who they were fighting against, they were capable fighters. It wasn't cheap. They did a good job in setting up the action scenes.
No, it wasn't cheap, and it also is one of those to where you could see what was going on. I mean, I saw someone talking about Snake Eyes. Oh my God, Snake Eyes with the shaky cam, man. I want to see the action, and you get to see that in here. I mean, you get either in a close quarter combat that you get, or where in the open spaces you get to see the action. And you get effects in here as well. It is obviously rated R, but some of the things I thought were very interesting was not so much the kind of extended violence, but like the quick ones. Like there's a scene in here early on where Andy goes and retrieves Niall from the base, and Niall's still trying to figure out, what exactly is going on and who this person is. And she bails out of this truck into the middle of the desert.
I love that scene.
That was a great scene. Tell our folks about that scene.
If I can remember, because I haven't seen it in a while.
Sure.
I haven't seen it. I think she gets out of the truck, and I think Andy stops the truck, and then she's in the middle of the desert, and I think Andy shoots her in the head.
Yeah. Niall goes to run, and Andy does not hesitate and just pop. Just right in the head, drops her. And then she comes up to her and she's like, oh yeah, when they're younger it takes longer. And she just sits and waits, and suddenly Niall is up again.
He's up again. It's like she's got that great look on her face, just like you expect. It's like, what the blankety 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 blank, and it's like, wait a minute, you shot me
in the head. Yeah. That was the one thing, and that's another thing with this too that was interesting, was the reactions of people to when the things happened or whatnot, or how these immortals did stuff that, if you're immortal, you're going to do that. Like the four of them walking into that trap, and they just get riddled. I mean, just killed. Or other parts where Niall had to prove that she was immortal, so she shot herself in the foot in front of Copley. Copley, and they do things that you would expect immortals to do. And yet they weren't also like completely flawed, like completely broken either, though. Because I don't know about you, Lamont, but I've watched films over the years, especially genre films, and when you get characters like this, sometimes you get them written to where they're chronic alcoholics. They're constantly drinking, or they just they're just broken. But these folks are still just living their lives. At least the impression I got.
Yeah, because that's one thing I was impressed by. I said, wow, they're not alcoholics, they're not broken. I said they might be a little battle weary, but that's about it. But they actually are. They seem to be doing pretty well, and when they actually living their lives. Which I thought was decent.
They're very long lives, but and I appreciated that, because they tried to stay out of the limelight. You get a scene where Andy ends up being in the background of a selfie, and so she manages to work it out to where she gets that picture deleted, so they don't find her. Now, granted, she does drink, but I don't get the impression of alcoholism going on, though they do imbibe every so often. So, yeah, it was the couple of the group I was impressed with. It was an interesting dynamic to include in it, that they weren't a dysfunctional couple either. These two,
no, they truly loved each other.
These two individuals really loved each other, and they have for hundreds of years.
I know, and that's the fact, is that they've been together for so long, and yet they still love each other. You know, they may have their quirks and their little kind of fights that they have each other, but they still love each other. You know, they're willing to make sure that, you know, that's what I truly loved about that relationship with them. You can see that they actually did love each other. You know, and it shouldn't matter whether they're a same-sex couple or a heterosexual couple.
No, they were just a couple. And in fact, you know, and it's one of those things where you live that long, you know, nothing's saying you're going to just stay in the same lane. You know, I mean, and yeah, I thought that was just awesome with those two, how they still got along. They still were with each other. You didn't have that kind of made up conflict. Well, they're stuck with each other because they're immortal. You know, oh, we're staying together as a couple because neither one of us can die. You know, oh, we've tried killing each other many times, but it just, you know, that type of thing, which you can get with that. So, yeah, I mean, it did surprise me. Again, I didn't think that it was like, oh my God, they reinvented the wheel here, but it is a fun action movie about immortals that made me want to see more.
Oh yeah, definitely want to see more. It'll be interesting to see where they're going to take when they ever complete this the sequel, where they're going to take the sequel to, and what they've been up to since the last movie. You know, how's Andy coupled with not being immortal again? Because I think that's a good sub story of how she's going to play not being immortal again. I think she better invest in Kevlar.
She should invest in Kevlar. Yeah,
invest in Kevlar again. Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they will, and I wonder if they're going to have a new immortal come on board.
Well, I mean, they had Quinn at the end, so you kind of figure. It's hard to gauge, though, if they're going to make her a villain or just an opponent of Andy, you know, to where she's not a true like super villain or anything, but at the same time, she's just got her own agenda. Especially when she connects up with Booker, who got exiled, because he betrayed the group because he thought he was doing good, which. Again, I mentioned it's bad, I know, but for everyone, for the most recent probably reference, it's kind of the Thanos thing. His motivation, as well as Copley's, was, well, we've got these immortals. If we can learn how to make people immortal, we can save people because we couldn't save our loved ones from cancer or from a chronic illness. Which, you know, just adds that little bit of, okay, I can kind of see your motivation. But there's other ways to go about doing it.
Yeah.
You know, take some blood and give it to people. And also, it made me curious that, say they did get the sample and they figured out what made these folks immortal, the fact that their immortality runs out makes you wonder, well, even if they did combine or make something based off of their DNA or whatever, would that eventually run out for people? Would they still die?
Yeah, because there's no telling how long. First of all, if it would be compatible in our systems, would our body reject it? You know, and if it does accept it, well, how long do we actually stay immortal? There's no guaranteeing about how that would work.
And that, I think, because I was wondering how they were going to handle the immortality in general, but the fact they didn't know when it would run out, I liked that angle because it still gave these characters, you didn't have the Superman effect to where a Superman, unless someone's got some kryptonite in their back pocket, he's fine. He's He's fine. He's not in any kind of actual danger. The same with these. If they were immortal and they just live forever regardless, well, they're not in any danger. So you lose a little bit of that tension. But here with Andy getting her mortality, and I'm going to say supposedly, and I'll say why in a minute, getting her mortality adds at least a little bit of tension to her character and a little bit of a feeling of a threat that her character could die. Now, her character still heals apparently fairly quick because Lamont, we get at the end, there's not that much time between the final chase and a battle with the bad guy and his, the big boss battle before you get to the main boss. But she seemed not too worse for wear in the final scenes of this movie. And I'm like, wait, did her immortality come back?
Yeah, I kind of thought that. I said, well, she really, I said, I know she was hurt, but she seems to be okay.
She got gut shot, for crying out loud. And she's like, now granted, yeah, I mean, she may have some elements of her immortality self, but still they're sitting in the bar and I'm like, wait, weren't you just bleeding out? I'm like, it can't be that far because you're talking about what to do with this Booker guy for betraying you. So we're talking not that long. So do you think they still are going to play the angle that she has her mortality back, or does she maybe get her immortality back if they actually do it too?
If they do it too, that's a plot they can play on where she's she's losing her mortality, but they find a way where she can get it back. That could be some type of a subplot they can play into this movie.
Maybe play at the angle of the whole balance thing, where where they battle Quinn and Quinn at the end gets killed, and then suddenly she gets her immortality back again, kind of like Highlander. Actually, what I think would be interesting, especially if they couldn't get Charlize Theron back, which they probably would for the sequel, but if they couldn't, they easily could play it off of she dies of old age, and you have Niall as the new leader, because it felt like they were kind of setting it up as Niall being the new, even though she's the newest of the group, kind of being the leader of this group should Andy actually die. I mean, what'd you think of that?
It's an interesting concept because she's military. She has leadership skills. I don't know about the other two guys. I don't know if they can actually be effective as leaders. I don't really see them leading. I could see whatchamacallit leading more than those two guys. But then again, like I said, it depends. They could have actually, by the time this movie comes about, they could have actually found another immortal to replace Booker.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that could be interesting of that happening. And I know we're going into if the Old Guard 2 came up, would be interesting is if Andy, they still have Andy. She's got her mortality, but she's still badass because Charlize Theron, I've loved her in all her action movies she's been in. Even if the movies themselves weren't that great, they could have it to where Andy's fighting Quinn, and then suddenly Quinn loses her immortality as well, and then these two fight at the end as mortals instead of immortals. That could be an interesting angle.
That could be interesting. Yeah, I would like that.
And I think that's what intrigued me most with this is the way they set it up. They give you enough explanation to go, okay, here's enough of the world building to where you can buy into, okay, we've got immortals, and the fact that they can die whenever. Okay, that's cool. But you still didn't give me everything. So they could do a lot of different approaches to this material. Heck, even do a Niall spinoff. just her. She leaves the group or something. Give me some post-apocalyptic immortal.
Oh man,
let's see them in the wastelands. Yeah. They cross paths with Mad Max. No. What'd you think of the budget for this film? I mean, we've got a number of locations going on and the look. I mean, for a net, It sounds bad, but for a directly made Netflix films, they can be hit or miss. But what did you think of the production for this?
I think I'm not mistaken. It was supposed to be a theatrical release, but then COVID hit, and then they had to sell it, and then Netflix bought it.
Really? Well, that would explain it.
I think that's what this whole because I think if I remember it was supposed to be released in theaters, but of course COVID hit, and they decided to
good old COVID.
No.
Apparently, it is based off of a graphic novel, which I'd be interesting to read the novel and see what happens in the novel. I'm not sure how accurate it was to, to the actual source material. So, what I also think was interesting, and why I think what helped with the camera work is I heard that most of the actors did most of their stunts.
Yeah, no, yes, yeah, because I know Charlize, she did mostly a lot of her own stunts.
So I think and I think Kiki did too. Which, I mean, there's a reason why Asian cinema, when you get those action films in Asian cinema, why they're so good. I think a lot of times is because the actors are doing the fighting, so you can do better camera work. You don't have to hide the face of the person or put a long wig on.
You don't have to hide the face because if I remember correctly, in Chuck Norris's Lone Wolf of Quay, both Chuck Norris and David Carradine said that they wanted to do their own fight scenes,
right?
Their own fight scenes, and they did not want to have it so that way they can fight it. It was also an interesting concept because when we see Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris do their fight scenes, I think was it Fist of Fury? I forget which one it is.
Oh yeah, Enter the Dragon? No,
that's not Enter the Dragon.
Fist of Fury. I think it was
Fist of Fury. It was like it was the first time you had a actor who moved just as fast as Bruce does. They couldn't stand Bruce would move so fast the camera couldn't keep up, and so when him and Chuck Norris had their fight scenes, he was just as fast as Bruce.
It was Way of the Dragon is what the film was. But yeah, I know they were both. It's a wonderful fight scene. I love it. But again, it shows you. I think I'm not saying that actors should put themselves in harm's way, but if there's stunts that they can do, I think it helps immerse you in these films and makes them better because the camera work, then they can get up close, they can do medium shots, they can do a lot of different things when you have the actual actor doing the action. That's what I think. That's why, like the Bruce Lee films, especially, it's like, I mean, and it's Bruce. I mean, that he just it's just a whole different individual altogether. But yeah, I like the choreography in here. What'd you think of the old weapons? I thought that was
that was very intriguing weapon. I like the design of her main weapon. That's something I've never seen before. And it's when I first saw it on the logo, I said I didn't know it was going to be her weapon, and then I see it in the trailer. I was like, that's a very interesting weapon. I've never seen anything like that. You got to give credit to the person who created that, who designed that weapon for her.
Yeah, her weapon was kind of like a battle axe, but it's not in an axe form. It was a round, almost like it was a round circle blade. Which, I've not actually seen that before. I've seen that on like the end of staves, but not in a melee weapon like that with the short handle. And and I loved how they had the I was happy they had the crazy billionaire as he was held up in his penthouse as the Immortals were coming after him, how he was holding the axe like he was gonna, he was holding her weapon like he was gonna do something, and he wasn't gonna do anything.
I know, that's just like it was like him holding a pair of nunchucks.
It was like, no, that's why you hired the second boss, the secondary boss who dies in a brutal way.
I know. Ooh, man.
Showing his neck crack like that. And I'm gonna say right now, I think this film has one of my favorite finales of killing of the boss, basically, of the main bad guy. Was it Niall? She literally
jumps out the window and drops all the way down in I think it was a limo.
Yeah, it was limo. Like a beam or a beamer. No, it was a beamer. I think it was
a beamer. Yeah, beamer.
But she grabs him and lands on top. I'm like, and what was great about that shot is you follow them down. I didn't expect to follow them down all the way through the car.
I'm like, wow.
Like, okay, they went there. All right. So yeah, I enjoyed this film. I think it's a good modern action film with a little bit of an interesting level of world building with the action sequences. It does make me want to find the graphic novel.
I know, yeah. Yeah, because I just remember it was just based upon a graphic novel, because the person who wrote the screenplay, I think, also wrote the graphic novel. I think one of the things that he said that he wanted to keep in there, because the relationship that the two guys have, that's actually in the comic books. He said he wanted to keep that relationship in there.
And I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did. Because I think, if you have that representation show up more in big films and just films in general, it becomes less of a, oh my God, they went there with a couple, and it's just, oh, they're a couple. It doesn't matter if it's same sex or not.
That's right.
And so that's why I was glad he kept that in there. I do have to mention there is a wonderful fight scene between Charlize Theron and Kiki, between Andy and Niall on a plane.
Oh yeah, that was a good fight scene.
Oh man, these two went at each other. Wow, that was brutal. And you had a Russian guy flying the plane, and yeah, I mean, you get your action film tropes, but at the same time, you do have some interesting bits to make you go, okay, that was cool. I had a good time with it.
Yeah.
And I hope they do a sequel, because I'd love to see them play in this world more, though I'm not sure how they would do the villain. I mean, they're probably going to have, the one character be the villain, Quinn, but I'd like them to surprise me and not have her be the
Yeah, I hope they will have a better villain than the billionaire.
Yeah, the billionaire, he was, I mean, don't get me wrong, Harry Melling plays it fine.
He does. I didn't have a problem with his performance, because you could see he's having fun chewing up the scenery, but it was just unfortunate, it was cliche.
I'm glad you mentioned chewing up the scenery, because he was chewing up every ounce of scenery he had. I mean, he was like at Lex Luthor and Batman v Superman level type of crazy billionaire type characters. So yeah, I'd recommend it. My final thought on it is check it out, especially with it being on Netflix. Though, even if this was in the theater, I probably would have gone seen it and paid admission for it, because I like genre films, and this was up my alley. What about you, Lamont?
Oh yeah, I definitely would recommend it. Take a look and see it. Very good action film, good performances, great stunt work. I think most people will enjoy it just like they have.
And don't let the 2-hour runtime fool you. The movie moves quick.
Very well paced.
It is so well paced. I was like, when I started it, I'm like, oh, it's going to be 2 hours. Okay. And by the end of it, I'm like, wow, that was 2 hours.
I was like, wow, that was good.
This film keeps a steady pace. Even when you get to the character stuff, it just keeps moving. So don't let the runtime turn you off either. So yeah, we'll wrap it up here with the Old Guard. Thank you so much for those folks who have tuned into us live. And thank you to all my listeners. We keep gaining more and more all the time. It's because of you guys out there that we do this. And now, Mr. Lamont, my good man, the floor is yours. Licensed to shill. Please tell folks out there about your stuff.
Okay, well, as obviously I host a YouTube channel called the Horror Money G, where I review horror movies, horror TV shows, not video, horror TV shows, live streams, and other things horror related. If you haven't, please check out my review of *Malignant*. It is up right now on my channel. I'm pretty sure there'll be links in the description box below where you can actually check out my channel. And also beware of the miser. He's coming back.
October is right around the corner. So get ready for my 31 days of horror. That's for sure. And speaking of horror, folks, I do have to plug that we have a new horror fest in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The tradition of indie horror is returning in the form of the Sawdust City Fright Fest, second weekend in October in Oshkosh. The Friday night, we kick it off by looking at showing Manos Hands of Fate. It's going to be at the Historic Time Community Theater in downtown Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The festival will take place, and so we kick it off with Manos Hands of Fate, which I believe admission will be free for that. People can come in, and then Saturday of that weekend, which is the 9th, we will be kicking off 2 blocks of shorts, which will also have Q&As of filmmakers, and we end the evening with Manos Returns. Yes, the sequel to Manos Hands of Fate. Fate, and Manos Returns, directed by Spoiler Room crew member Tanya Atomic. So, we've got that going on. The Sawdust City Fright Fest. We're on the social media stuff. We're establishing stuff. There's a page on Facebook, so check that out. And it's the second weekend of October. More information on those sites. You're going to want to check it out, folks. And if you're in Wisconsin, in the Great Cheesehead State, you may want to check it out. Admission's going to be reasonably priced for sure, and should be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it. So there's my plug for the evening, folks. Thank you so much again. And now we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Peace out, ladies and gentlemen, and stay safe out there.